But welcome everyone today to Nevada's quarterly meeting. No, will you please take a roll call?
Yes. Julie Weissman-Steinbach.
Present.
Evander Davis is not here, I believe. He may still be tied up. Ace Patrick.
Here.
Sabra McWhorter-Clark. Oh, Sabra is not here yet, but she did contact me. She's just going to be a few minutes late. Margaret Marcucci.
Here.
Linda Voivoda.
Present.
Peter Whittingham.
I'm here.
Obioma officer is excused absent today. Ashley Crow.
Here.
That's it. We do have quorum. Thanks.
Okay. Now we have public comment. Dawn, can you read the beginning, please?
I sure can. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under public comment period unless the matter itself has been specifically included on an agenda as an action item. To provide public comment telephonically, dial 1-253-215-8782 US Tacoma. When prompted to provide the meeting ID, enter 929-904-1434 and passcode 707401. Comments will be allowed at the beginning and end of each day and will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Persons making comments will be asked to begin by stating their name for the record and to spell their last name and provide the secretary with written comments.
Does anyone have public comment?
I thought Stephen Cohen had some, but I'm not sure. Stephen, are you waiting till the last public comment or did you want to give your public comment now?
Hi, Stephen Cohen for the record. Cohen with a C, or Cohen with a C, sorry. I'll defer. I'll send you the written remarks afterwards.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Okay.
I just want to say that I have a person that's interested in joining us. So I gave her the SILC. Don, this is directed to Don. Don, this is Linda Voivoda for the record. I'm so sorry.
Linda, did you mute yourself again?
Sorry about that. I have a person that
You got muted again.
I did it again. Sorry. I need to move my cursor. I have a person that is interested in joining SILC. So I will get her email address. Dawn, is it okay if I give you the information from her and you email her, or who do I have to go through?
This is Dawn Lyons. That would be fine, Linda. You can give her my email and I'll send her the information from our website that she needs to look at and know and explain to her
Okay.
what the process would be. If she's here today, she could introduce herself and express her interest. That's one of the requirements.
Okay, I will. She's just right across the hall. I can go get her and see if she wants to do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you.
So, shall we proceed?
I don't think there's any other public comment, but we could give
Okay,
one more chance, I suppose.
going. Okay, we're gonna proceed. We did such a good job yesterday that we're beginning with item number 9. And this was brought to our attention by Peter. So Peter, would you like to take the floor?
Okay, Madam Chair, thanks so very much. My apologies not being here yesterday, but I'm here today, and I thought I would bring this matter to this forum for a conversation. And although the agenda maybe points out to literacy in the schools, my concern is not so much or only for the schools, but for our members in our service population, meaning the disability community, especially the intellectual developmental disability, who are in the transition phase out of school, adults who are unable to read. And here is the conversation for discussion. As we look at preparing our members for the job market so that they can be included, integrated in society, especially through the job market. The emphasis is on the vocational skills of our members. In fact, the same thing is in the school. They have been relegated primarily to vocational skill enhancement as opposed to academic. And I understand the limitation of our members cognitively. But my question is, can we, as a body, outreach to whatever service that there may be, to focus a little bit, give more, not a little bit, but give more attention to helping our members to read. In my own organization, the Down Syndrome Organization of Southern Nevada, and we have extended members, not just persons with Down syndrome, but also in other areas of the intellectual developmental community, including autism. There are quite a few members who have ability to, of course, participate in the workplace, especially in the service industry and elsewhere, but are lacking the ability to read. And as I look at my members and see how, as much as they're willing, they are limited in their scope. And so my question is, what can we do? And I would love to have a feedback, suggestions from anybody within hearing. What are some suggestions, programs, in addition to what we're doing, that we can give focus, not just one organization, but as a state? So let us look at our programs and support that we provide to our members and give some focus to helping them to develop their reading skills. You have a deployment of individuals in service industry who cannot read, don't know what danger signs or don't know what, in fact, some of the exits or some of the information that they should know. And so the core of my conversation is to outreach to service entities on this forum and to help me understand, if not help us to develop or give attention to programs that can really focus on helping our members to develop or to improve, enhance their reading skills, at least at the basic level. That's my introductory comments. I will maybe answer or add as needed depending on the conversation. But I would like to hear other points of view about this particular subject and to see if that is shared by others and what other suggestions there may be.
Dawn.
Thank you. This is Dawn Lyons. Peter, you and I had discussed this outside of the meeting a little bit, and I found it concerning when you said that so many people were showing that they were not literate after graduating high school, and or so many, of your members. And so it brought to the point that, we discussed our consumer satisfaction survey and how there is an open-ended question about concerns in the disability community and how that really hadn't come up as a topic, but it might just be because it's so open-ended that people didn't consider it when they were looking at that option. And so my thought was we could have an additional question in our consumer satisfaction survey this year that we could just add a question saying, are you concerned about literacy? Are you concerned that, your student is able to read after graduation? And I'm also wondering, and I know Linda's next, but if maybe Ashley might know if the Department of Education has any data on that topic.
I do not personally know, but if you would like to send me whatever information, I can request it from Catherine Fusilier and see if she can pull something like that.
If I may, I have looked at some data and it speaks generally about the literacy rate among for school age and different demographics. I am not sure what the rate is across the board. Nationally, we can look at employment rate for disability. The literacy rate, I don't remember seeing that highlighted specifically, but and I haven't had a chance to discuss this particular subject with Catherine. As you know, she may not be well enough to attend. And it was my intention to have a conversation with her. I'm not sure she has the data either, but I'm just thinking that generally, if we can reach out to the resources that are available to see whether or not that is an issue that we can give more attention to.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Hey, Peter, I know that some of the libraries around the state do a reading program, but I don't know if they specifically reach out to those that are illiterate. Is there any way that the state independent living can get involved in getting a program to reach out to the libraries to maybe get volunteers to help with the literacy problem we have? And I realize there is illiteracy problems because most of the people that were going into RCIL, which I no longer work there, but I still advocate for people. I seen a lot of people that did not know how to understand questions on applications. I've seen where they say, can you fill it out for me? Because they did not know how to write correctly. And this stems from across the board. I mean, the homeless, the Down syndrome kids, even the adults that have Down syndrome or even slight autism, they have a hard time understanding. I have a client that I work with all the time that tells me, well, I don't understand what this says. Can you tell me? So I've been working with her a little bit on how she states her questions and reads things to understand. So I'm just wondering if we can pal up or partner up with the libraries, because a lot of them will go to the libraries just to look at the pictures in the book. So a question out there, maybe that might help.
So Linda, before we maybe somebody else join in, I will tell you that we have a program here. It's our reading clinic program, and it's designed for a one-on-one partner with our member, with 1 hour sessions, depending on availability. And we use different applications. So currently, we're using mostly an application called Reading Eggs, which is a very good program. However, and the reason why I brought this to Dawn's attention as we were sharing is that the number of our members, and again, not just Down syndrome, we now have maybe about 30% of our membership who are non-Down syndrome diagnosed and mostly on the spectrum. And I was very surprised here in Vegas. It's not quite the same in Los Angeles or California, where I came from. My daughter, Sophia, she was reading in high school and in junior college, and she came here and went to UNLV. I found out, as an example, that one of our members went to the UNLV project, a focus program, and she herself is not able to read. I was shocked to discover that. And I found out that the inability to read is widespread in our service population. And what has happened, it appears, whether it is pride or shame or whatever else, we have found way to camouflage it or to pretend otherwise or just not to talk about it. But having had conversations with my parents, and we're now deciding that this is something that we need to focus on, because if our children are going to be integrated in society to work and really play any meaningful role in the workplace, socially, otherwise, it's embarrassing when someone says, "Okay, well, can you sign here?" And you can tell there's a hesitation because she's unable to, because she doesn't know where to sign or whatever. And so I just think that as an organization, as a state, and everybody within earshot of my voice are in some way involved in helping our disability community, if we can make that a focus, a renewed focus, or put it on the top of our list of focus, that we're now going to consciously and deliberately give some attention to the issue of literacy among our service population.
I truly was with the record. I'd like to ask another expert that I've heard that illiteracy is a big issue in the large and visually impaired population as well, because they're not teaching real skills the way they used to. So I think this is it affects a bigger population that you might be even considering. Dawn, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Julie. This is Dawn Lyons. I agree, Julie. I think there is a vast population of people with disabilities that are probably disproportionately illiterate when they graduate high school. In fact, I was discussing how I even know personally someone about my age who graduated high school with severe dyslexia and couldn't pass his driver's license exam because he couldn't read it. And you know, this affects people in all aspects of their life. And even though I think it is an important topic, and I think it probably should be addressed, I think the first step is to get the data together to make sure that we are addressing it appropriately. Not only in validating that it is the type of important issue that we need to pursue, solutions to, but also that, because it wasn't brought up in our consumer satisfaction survey, that we need to really gather the data on it before we, entertain the idea of really addressing an issue that we're not really sure what the scope is yet, right? So, I have a suggestion. My suggestion is maybe Linda, since you know of this library program, you could go and ask them if they can give you that data on how many people have applied for the program and utilized it, and how many, if they collect data on how many of those people might have disabilities. You could just ask. It can't hurt, right? And
My
then,
favorite place, the library, yeah.
and then
Also, Dawn, I just wanted to mention this. A lot of those surveys that were given, they were helped filling those out by somebody or one of us that was representing those surveys. So right then and there, it should have been written on the survey itself, helped by certain person, or has dyslexia, cannot read form, or something like that. I think the survey shows most basic things on there that needs to be filled out that we do help with. But if we know our community better than just that survey, we can add questions to it so that we can understand them better and what their needs are that they don't even really think they need, because and be able to offer that, because if we don't offer it, how are they going to know we have it?
Linda, this is Dawn Lyons. I agree, and it's a really good idea, actually. In fact, that was going to be my next after I said you can ask the library. I was going to say I can send Ashley that email, and maybe she can find out from the Department of Education what information they have. But also, I can add a checkbox on our survey saying, "Did you get help completing this?" And that
Yeah.
might inform us quite a bit.
That's what I was thinking as well. Julie was good style.
Okay, and then do we want to, I know it always takes time to collect data, but we can revisit this again at the next meeting on an agenda item and see what we've been able to obtain so far as data goes. And then at the end of the year, of course, we always assess our consumer satisfaction survey results. And so, or at least we should be, and we can revisit it then again as well and see if our data matches the data that we already have been able to collect from others, and see what at that point we can do. Does that sound like a plan?
Don, this is Peter, for the record. I appreciate the suggestion for the data, and certainly I would hope that maybe the Department of Education representative here on the call could maybe point us a direction to get some more empirical data. But in the absence of the empirical data, anecdotally, I think just from experience, and it's not just mine, but others here, if not yourself as well, know that there's a concern in our disability community when it comes to literacy. So what I'm asking is that instead of maybe waiting for the empirical data and the research to prove what we already know, may I ask that we also engage the Governor's Council on Developmental Disability. Maybe when Catherine is able to maybe weigh in and to see if her organization has an outreach to or have the ability to add to this conversation, or whether or not they can maybe provide some information as to what we can do in directing or focus in this area, pending even empirical data, because it is well known with the information that we currently have that there is a significant concern among our service population regarding our members able to read. Not just my organization, but across the board, as Linda shared, and others I suspect will also share. So my thoughts are, can we, one, maybe ask our member here from the Department of Education what they can do to provide some data, and two, to reach out to the Governor's Council to see whether or not they concur, and if they can use their leverage their resources to help to develop some kind of program that would focus on improving the literacy rate among the disability service population here in Nevada.
This is Dawn Lyons. Julie, may I answer?
Yeah, that's
Peter, I think that it would be a wonderful idea for you to reach out to Catherine and go ahead and see what kind of data the DD Council has on this already. Although, like Julie said, and like Linda said, this is a more widespread issue than just the IDD population possibly, and that we need some more data on that as well. But it would be great if the DD Council already had an initiative that we could get their data from that, or, you know, what they could contribute and perhaps maybe partner in the future on, if we do find that the data is significant enough that it supersedes our other objectives and indicators that we can justify it in our goals.
Okay.
To include that in in what you're talking about, some kind of initiative.
I've I took in Julie West's style for the record. I think the challenge for me about a topic like this is my inclination is I want to fix it. But as the Nevada State and Nevada Living Council, we operate like a higher realm, I guess you would say. We don't do programs. So I think the challenge for me is this seems like a question that requires a programming, yeah, and I don't know where to go. Dawn,
Thank you, Julie.
correct me if I'm wrong.
You are absolutely correct, Julie. We cannot do programs. We cannot provide services as a council. That's why I'm suggesting we collect the data, because if we can support the idea with the data that we collect that this is an important issue that needs to be addressed immediately, then we can advocate for it. We can definitely educate, and we can make sure that more people are aware so that a program can be implemented and that funding goes there by the appropriate sources, maybe the state, maybe legislature, who knows, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's what you're saying, Julie, right?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you.
This is Dee Dee Formaster for the record.
Yes.
My alarm is that even with kids who have learning disabilities, they're often not given the tools that they could use to utilize and help them to be able to, you know, equalize themselves in society. Like, for instance, a lot of schools don't use read and write goals. And a lot of schools don't use the technology that is out there to help kids who do not read well. And the reality is that kids read better when they're using something like read and write goals and using the book at the same time. It helps them to be able to process often better. And often the school district is of mind that, well, if they can't read, they should learn to read first. And the thing is, with Read and Write Goals and other programs that are out there to help assist the student, they need to realize that often that increases their ability to be able to read because of the exposure to the language, the exposure of the sentence structures. And I don't think that, I think the school district often thinks that those things are crutches when they're not. It's like whether or not people should use calculators in school. Well, a calculator is not a crutch. It's something that all of us use when you think about it. You know, if we're having to do a lot of math, are we going to do it in our head? No, we're not. We're going to use calculators. So I think also we need to talk about assistive technology in this area too. Thank you.
I'm gonna jump in and knock on the door, and then I'll give Peter the last word.
Thanks. Thanks.
I think, as Christ said, I think I remember all this to get the data together so that when I begin to go either to school districts, even the regional centers, they could use the data we collect to back them up. So in my mind, I think that's our first step. I'm gonna let Joy speak, and then Peter, you get the last word.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. This is Dawn Lyons. Like you said, Julie, I think we need to collect the initial data first. When people start, if we start saying this is a problem, we're going to get asked, how do you know? And that's the most important question that we need to be able to answer. So we need to have that evidence-based information to move forward with other types of, drilling down into the details, like you said, Dee Dee, like what exactly is the cause and what could be the solution, right? Is it more assistive technology that's needed? Is it more understanding of how to utilize that assistive technology that's available? Those types of things come just after we make sure that we know that it is the issue and that we can prove that that's the case. And then, I know it's frustrating that we have to start at the beginning, but like I said, we don't want to step into something looking like we're fools. We don't know what we're talking about, right? We want to make sure that we have our information straight and that we can answer those questions, those simple questions, before we can even justify that, we have this issue that we need to work on. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
And Peter, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up. Julie, thank you so very much. I understand and agree in substance with Dawn in terms of having empirical data on which to rely as we move forward. Two things. It is not the intention of this conversation that SILC provides program to address it. It is the intention that SILC arm itself with the information so we can properly advocate for our support for the resources, state, federal funded resources to address this as a problem, as a concern in our community. What I'm asking is that this matter be set on the agenda for a subsequent meeting to follow up. In the meantime, we'll ask the Department of Educational rep to research through their department and provide some empirical data that they may have. And I will also follow up with Catherine's Governor's Council on Developmental Disability to see what their take, what support that they can also provide, and we will have a follow-up discussion at the next meeting.
This is Dawn Lyons. Julie, if I might just interject and say thank you, Ashley, for providing that information in the chat. Ashley put in a couple links to some data that is available through the Department of Education, and I'll make sure I save those for materials so that we can review them and discuss them at the next meeting. So thank you.
You're welcome. That is actually a ongoing project with UNR. So they are currently working on overall literacy rates. So that might be a solid source of data and already ongoing work. So we're not starting from the ground up.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and Dawn, we make sure this gets on the next meeting agenda, please.
Julie, can I interject? This is Linda Voivoda for the record. This is Sharon Reed, and she would like to join our council. And I don't see Dawn on there, but I brought her in so she could listen to our meeting and see what goes on here.
Great. Well, welcome. Okay. Peter, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. And I'd like to encourage other supporters, if there's something you're passionate about, reach out to Dawn, have a discussion, and let's see if we can make it an agenda item on future meetings. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Julie.
Julie, this is
Yeah.
Dawn Lyons. I don't want to take us off track, but I was wondering if it would be okay if we could revisit the standing agenda item for both days that is for member introductions and introductions from individuals interested, so that Linda, I'm sorry, I forgot her name already, but if she could just introduce herself and express her interest, so that since she is here and able to do that, it is on her agenda for both days, if that's okay.
You read my mind. That's where I was going.
Go ahead, Sharon, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sharon Reed. I live across from Linda. I'm very interested in being able to help people with the learning disabilities, basically, because I've had comprehension problems all my life. My son had dyslexia. And the fight to get them through, get the kids to the schools, through the schools, get them graduated, get them to actually be able to learn and not just thrown through the system, is what I'm most interested in helping. And so if there's a place for me, I would love to come.
And this is Dawn.
In the background, her dog's here too.
You said you would give her my email so that she can reach out, and then we can reach out to you through email, and we can discuss what steps are next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you and welcome. I'm gonna call on Dawn.
Julie, it looks like Stephen Cohen has his hand up. I mean, he may be expressing interest in membership himself. I'm not sure.
Hi, Julie. Stephen Cohen, for the record.
Hi.
Dawn is correct. The governor's office already has everything. I just have to send them my updated resume.
Wonderful. Welcome. Great. Okay. Now can I onward to lead the discussion on that item 10.
Okay, thank you, Julie. I'll go ahead and read that agenda item. It says discussion and make any necessary changes and evaluate action plan regarding the federal fiscal year 25 through 27 state plan for independent living, or SPIL, as approved by the Administration for Community Living, or ACL. So to begin this discussion, I know that Mary, originally I had only had this agenda item on the agenda to discuss some potential changes that you thought should be made regarding some of the language that you thought should be worded differently based on our discussion of what we had approved with changes at the last meeting before we submitted our spell.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, I'm Mary Sizer. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern Nevada Center for Independent Living. And I think that the change that I was talking about, Dawn, if memory serves me correctly, there was some language that was left over from our original spill, if I'm correct, that stated that there would be a memo of understanding between the three CILs in Nevada, and the verbiage had incorrectly identified that there are three CIL we identify as ACL Title VII Part C accredited CILs. And so the verbiage implied that there were three Title VII Part C ACL accredited CILs, and that a memo of understanding needed to be developed. Whereas with the CILs that are through ACL, we've always worked together. We didn't see the need for a memo of understanding to distribute the territories. We've always had our counties that we work in. We've always respected the boundaries. So if that's what we're talking about, I think that's what I was mentioned right before I signed.
Mary, this is Dawn Lyons. I'm trying to find exactly the location of the verbiage you're specifically talking about. And I did include the state plan that was approved by ACL in our materials. If you wouldn't mind, could you look through that and tell me exactly where you're talking about? Because I'm having a difficult time finding exactly where you're talking about.
Okay, hold on. Let me pop it up on my screen.
I'll share my screen as well.
Oh, gosh, thank you. I think it was in the executive summary. And then I do remember a conversation, Dawn, where you and I were emailing with our ACL project manager right before we signed. So let me take a look at this. If you'll scroll back up just for a second, please. Thank you. Let's see. Okay. All right, scroll down, please. Oh, I know. Dawn, do you have word search on your computer?
Yeah, but I don't know if I can use it while I'm sharing.
Oh, the stream.
Yeah, I don't think it'll allow me to do that.
So let me open up my copy, and then I'm just going to type in the words memo of understanding.
I can stop share and search and then bring it back.
Okay, if you want to do that and then just enter.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, okay, what would you like me to search for exactly?
It's memo of understanding, or we might have put it in there as an MOU.
Let me search memorandum of understanding first. First one that comes up is between the SILC and DSE, so that one's not it.
No.
The next one is under indicator 1.1.6, SILC will perform a regional consumer study to determine underserved and or unserved areas to determine feasibility for a memorandum of understanding between Centers for Independent Living in Nevada by September 30th, 2025.
Yeah, I think that's what we were talking about.
Okay, yeah, that's what ACL had recommended, and
Yeah, that's what I remember as well.
And I think where you might be concerned is that the RCL was included in that, but we did not use that language, and we did not include any specific centers for independent living in that language. So it's just a matter of determining feasibility for it.
Then correct me if I'm wrong. You want to do a study to determine if we need a memo of understanding between the Northern Nevada Center for Independent Living and the Southern Nevada Center for Independent Living?
Here, I will share my screen once again so I can read it and you guys can follow along here. So where it says indicator 1.1.6.
Okay, I see it.
SILC will perform a regional consumer study to determine underserved and or unserved areas to determine feasibility for a memorandum of understanding between Centers for Independent Living. So it's more of a study to determine unserved or underserved areas.
Okay, so we had talked about a study to determine the feasibility of underserved areas. And I think I do remember the conversations because, as we know, all of Nevada is underserved. Okay. I don't know. Lisa, do you remember anything? I remember there was something, and it could have been my interpretation. I just couldn't understand um, why we needed to do a feasibility between the two ACL accredited CILs to determine feasibility.
Mary, if I may, this is Dawn Lyons. I recall you and Lisa asking for a feasibility study for funding needed for specific areas, and that would include underserved or unserved areas. So what I did with that language is it kind of encompasses all of it, if that makes sense.
Okay, I know we did ask for the feasibility study. It was the memo of understanding. And Dawn, I do remember it was the last minute, and it was you, and it was our ACL project manager, myself, and we all decided, well, let's let it go for now. We'll pick it up next year because we still, have the opportunity. But okay, if you're saying a feasibility study, and I don't know why it didn't connect last time. If you're just saying we need to do a feasibility study about our underserved populations to develop a memo of understanding between the two centers, we can do that. I mean, we work well without a memo of understanding, but I don't see that would be a problem at all. Do you, Lisa? I think we lost Lisa.
I do think it's not necessarily stating that we should have a memorandum of understanding. It's more of a study to determine underserved and unserved areas and then discuss the feasibility about it, right? And what should be the next steps. And so that's kind of what I put in there based on what ACL suggested.
Okay, well, I appreciate the clarification. And then I do apologize if I, utilize your time in an unnecessary way, but I do appreciate the explanation.
Oh,
Thank you.
no, this is Dawn Lyons. Mary, I always appreciate your questions because we all need to be clear on these things. And I was trying to do my best to make sure I included everything that we had discussed and that ACL had suggested, and that, we were all on the same page. But if my wording was confusing, that's important to understand as well. If so, maybe others needed clarification too. And
Okay.
yours was not the only reason why this agenda item is there, but that was the initial reason. So the other thing that came up was that the legislative sessions are stated incorrectly. And that was my fault. And you know what? I put them in our notice of funding opportunities the way that they're in our spill. And so they're incorrect in our spill. But the way I'm looking at it here is, even though they're not totally accurate as far as, what our indicators indicate that we're going to be doing to address legislative session and what our goals are in that regard, we understand what we're looking at, and we know what years we're looking at and which sessions, and I don't think that ACL really cares. But here's the other thing is, if we end up doing an amendment, because we have several things that are basically pending legislative session, including salaries for our staff. And so I'm anticipating we're going to have to do some kind of an amendment within the next year or two anyway. And so at that time, if we needed to do an amendment, we definitely could update our legislative session numbers and make them more accurate. And I hope that everybody would be okay with that it doesn't have to be exact, because ACL doesn't know what legislative sessions we're talking about, but we do, right? Does that sit well with everybody, or is everybody really annoyed by the fact that our legislative sessions are incorrect in our spill? Because ACL did approve it that way, because they don't know what we're talking about.
Don, for the record, I think if you need to make a change, just make it. Because I think I'm seeing where you picked up the language now for the legislative notice of awards that were available. So I think if we're going to make any changes, it's better if we all as a group know what the dates of our legislative sessions are.
So this is Dawn Lyons again. So are we saying that we want to do a technical amendment to our spill so that we can change the session dates? Or do we want to wait and see if we have to do another amendment anyway, and then we'll change it at that time if it is more important and more pressing changes might need to be made?
Okay. For the record, this is Mary Evilsizer. Don, you're right. If we need to do another amendment, change it. If not, ACL, as you said, doesn't really know when our legislative sessions are. So we could leave it as is, as long as we know as a group, all of our partners know what the correct date is. And to be honest, I don't know how many individuals have the time to scope through this document down to the very nitty-gritty of every date.
Thank you. This is Dawn Lyons. I appreciate that, Mary, because like I said, I have a strong feeling that we're going to need to do an amendment soon anyway. And with the process, it's just a lot of tedious work, when if we just need to do it later, we just do it once. And then also, I can assure you guys that I will correct our error and explain that in our program progress report to ACL, so they understand that we know what we're looking at, and then they understand, and they can advise us if they think we need to do an amendment at that time.
Thank you.
And for truly bicycle driver, for the record, you might want to start a list of possible changes when we do make a if we do file a formal amendment, you might want to just make a list ongoing.
So this is Dawn Lyons. Julie, I have a list in my head.
Okay.
I guarantee you I know everything that might happen.
Okay. Okay.
And a lot of it will depend on legislative session and
Yeah.
our consumer data survey too. So, you know, if we determine that we need to do something differently or explain our underserved or unserved populations in more detail and have a little bit more of a plan in place, then will have to do an amendment for that as well. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm aware of them. I have the list in my head, but if you want, I can write them down.
I was just thinking like the easier when French tie comes, but whatever works. Is there anything else in this agenda?
No, actually, this is Dawn Lyons. There's actually one more thing within this agenda item that I
Yeah.
needed to address with this council.
Yes, please.
It's part of the meeting materials is the action items, the timeline that I created. And I did it a little bit differently this time. Actually, I can share my screen again so you can know what I'm talking about as far as the materials go. Oops, should probably make that bigger. So it's this document. It says at the very top, it says action items due for fiscal year 25 through 27 spill. And all I did was I copied the goals, and under those goals, the objectives and indicators. And I highlighted the areas that specify when it's due or when it's said that we will perform that task or that indicator. And so this way, because last time I tried to separate them out into each year, and it didn't work as well, I found, because a lot of them were ongoing goals. And so a lot of them repeated and the document just seemed really long. So I thought if I just copy them down and I highlight the actual due dates for each of these indicators, we can track them easier so that we can go through them at each meeting and make sure that we're evaluating our progress on our state plan in an appropriate and thorough way without missing anything or feeling like we're going over the same things over and over again. So I just needed some input from the council as to this formatting. I know not everybody can see the highlight, but if anyone needs me to, I can read through the highlighted sections to demonstrate what I'm talking about. If you need me to, just let me know. What do you think? Is this a good way to track our progress?
I'd like to hear from the council. What do you guys think?
This is Saber McWhorter Clark for the record. I like this form of tracking the information. I think it looks really well organized and it's easy to read, at least for me.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I am having a hard time seeing it because of my eyes. I apologize. I'll have to pull it up and read it later. But what I'm seeing, I like. It's okay.
Dee Dee Formaster for the record. I feel that it's a good way of tracking it. We may when the next legislative session is over and it's ongoing, we may need to change a few things if it's ongoing.
I agree with that too.
Julie, this is Peter.
Yeah.
Just maybe a comment, maybe an observation. For tracking purposes, what I'm looking at is a highlight of the timeline. But for tracking purposes, my thoughts are: can we have a little bit more detail to say what has been done to advance the particular goal for each of the areas identified? Merely highlighting the timeline may not fulfill or satisfy the need for tracking purposes, as it were. So, is it a case where we can provide a little bit more detail to say, okay, this is what we have done, and who perhaps might have been assigned to it, and here is a detailed account of the result. And so we can carry it over with sufficient information to say that there's some due diligence done in terms of our intended goal to accomplish each of the areas.
So, Peter, if I may, this is Dawn Lyons. I'd like to respond to that, because even though it doesn't specify in here, that's a very good point. I do always state, I add the language right after, where it's due or whatever. At some point in there, I would include that information as we progress, and then it updates every time we visit it again. But since you brought that up, and since not everything we do is always listed in our indicators and goals, or could be specifically pointed to that indicator, but could be under an objective, I think it's also a good idea, since you're on that point, to include some extra lines of, right under the objective, and maybe in a different color or something, that express other tasks that we have accomplished in that regard to fulfill that objective. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you, but just so you know, I do actually put that information in there, but I could always add more.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, and I appreciate that comment, the response, Don. I know you're diligent in all that you do. I'm just thinking, for the record, I don't know if there's do we do a sort of matrix spreadsheet that would have some kind of task assignment, and then certainly at maybe the end, maybe a notation or updated notation as to what has been done, and so we know what has been done and what is going to be carried forward. If we have something like that, that would be satisfactory, but like I said, merely highlighting may not be sufficient.
So this is Dawn Lyons. So are you asking for an Excel spreadsheet to track our progress on these, rather than a Word document that we can type our progress in? Because I find personally, since I have to complete the program progress report each year, that if I have the narrative already accomplished in a Word format, I can copy and paste that progress into our progress report and not have to extract data and change the language into a progress for a report at the end of the year. So in the Word document, it works easier for me to report on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I can't put the data in there as well. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah, so what I would do, a matrix in a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, where we could collapse the information in a particular cell, even though it's maybe a volume. We could collapse it in a particular cell and then expand from there, and to expand. But if the issue is addressed, whether it is by Excel form or Word form or a Microsoft Word format that you are comfortable with, all I'm asking perhaps for us to take a second look in terms of the accompanying detail, which you have addressed, to give us a little bit more detail in terms of what has been done, and so we know up to this date, this has been done in this particular area and what needs to be done in order to complete the particular task. And you may also, in that area, point out the additional resources and support that may be done, that may be needed. And so we would be more informed as to, as a group, as a body, what we need to do or to help you, or what other resources we need to do in order to accomplish this particular task.
Thank you, Peter. This is Dawn Lyons. I would be happy to include more information like that. And in fact, I am willing to bring up this document and update it as we discuss and as we evaluate our progress during each meeting when we do so. And I can add that then and there. And that helps me to keep it in Word format so that I can copy and paste into our program progress report. So
yes.
Yeah.
Dawn,
Thanks,
this
Dawn.
is Dee Dee Formaster for the record. I'm all for whatever is easiest for you, because you do a tremendous, like burying amount of paperwork. So whatever works best for you is what we should go for, because there's only you, and I don't want you to burn out and have way too much paperwork to do.
But I really appreciate your support, Dee Dee. This is Dawn Lyons, and it is a wonderful idea, Peter, to include more information. So I agree with both of you. I just wanted to explain why I prefer the Word format to Peter, but it's going to have the same information in it. And if we move forward, we can definitely add that detail. And I think that's a great idea. So I appreciate everyone's input, and I guess we don't really need to vote on this. I just wanted a consensus, and just for your guys' input so that we can move forward with this the way that we really need to. So thank you. I'll stop sharing now.
Before we move on, I'm going to use my chair prerogative and take a 5-minute tea break.
Julie, can we just take a 15-minute break right now? And
yes, that's even better. Let's do a 15-minute break. So we'll come back at 2:20.
Okay.
Okay.
I will pause it.
Welcome back, everyone. We're on agenda number 11, which is discussion and possible plan to draft a letter to the national organizations for statewide independent living causes, SILC, regarding developing a proposal to change current independent living language, including the use of the term consumer to the ACL. I'm going to let Dawn lead this discussion.
Sure, this is Dawn Lyons. So this agenda item was added because a couple meetings ago, and Peter, I don't mean to put you on the spot again or anything, but we had a discussion, and Peter, it was regarding the state plan for independent living, and throughout the state plan, including language that we didn't even include, but it was from the federal government, was the term consumer, and it didn't sit well with you, and you would prefer that it had said persons with disabilities, or something different. And Jennifer Kane actually felt similarly to you, and you were both very excited about that change. even though I really couldn't make that change because it wasn't all our language, it was also the federal language. So I brought this to an agenda item because I thought we probably needed to discuss it more. And if that was truly the case, that we did not want to use the term consumer anymore within the independent living networks across the nation, that we should start where the advocacy for that change should begin, which is the national SILC, and write them a letter expressing our concern with that language. And then that could possibly be brought forward if more SILCs felt the same way. So that's where that came from. But I don't know if you wanted to go ahead and express your idea about why you value changing the language.
This is Peter Whittingham for the record. Donna, I must say that it's okay sometimes to go through the bureaucratic process and maybe to go back from the beginning and look at what others are doing across the country, or maybe, as I said, the national. But as a body, I thought that the provisions allow us to make this change if we believe that or deem it to be appropriate and consistent with the language that we have used to describe our service population here. And as I referenced at the time, I don't have the document in front of me, but as I referenced at the time that most of the documents that I see refer to us as persons with disability, and the general term of consumer, whether it was used some time ago or maybe at the time, may be considered appropriate, but now the use of that term is so general, and it does not speak to our service population maybe in the specific way that it could. And so it's consistent, the term persons with disability is consistent with so much of our documentation and the written provisions. And so I don't think that, personally, I don't think that this is something that we need to maybe go back to and get national organization or national body to approve when it is something that is within our authority to do if the consensus is here on this board.
Thank you, Peter. This is Dawn Lyons. Just so you understand where I'm coming from with that, this is independent living language that's been historically accepted in the independent living community across the nation for a long time. And actually, I really wish John Rosenland was here because he has so much knowledge and history of independent living, and he could really give you a background on that. I don't know if he might bore you too. So, but I know Mary can probably explain a lot because Mary has been in this community for a long time. Mary, could you kind of help explain what I'm trying to say about that a little better? Mary Evilsizer, are you there? Are you able to describe why we use the term consumer in the independent living community a little better? Oh, she may have stepped away.
Hi, this is Dee Dee, Master for the record. I don't have the history to it, but it's been around 25 years that I have been in the CIL business, but I do have to say that I do not like the word consumer because it sounds like someone who uses something. And I would much rather have, it be something different. And yeah, I do think that we should ask other centers at the national conference and bring it up. Why not? What do we have to lose? That's my 2 cents.
This is Sabre McWhorter Clark for the record. If I could just also chime in on this.
Yes, please.
I worked in the independent living program for 7 years. And I don't love the term consumer either, frankly, but one of the reasons why in the IL model and movement that we use the term consumers is just to delineate that the person that is receiving services has control over that process. And they're the ones that are in charge of making the decisions in terms of what the goal is, what the barrier is, what the possible solutions might be. So it's I think also a way to differentiate between the medical model and the independent living philosophy and model. That's just my input.
I don't know the history either. This is Julie Weisman. Sign up for the record. But I don't think there is any perfect description. There's no perfect word we can use that everyone's gonna agree on. I hate the word consumer as well. And I don't know what, I've never come up with a good alternative. So,
Dawn Lyons, I know Lisa Bonney had her thumb up. I wonder if Lisa might have some input as well. I didn't realize, Lisa, you were still on, but if you have input into this, your input would be valuable.
Please.
Hi, I was here before. I had taken a phone call when the question was asked, and I was trying to get off the phone. So yeah, this is a historical word. This is a word that came along, and to Sabra's point, it has to do with a consumer is somebody who is in control. A consumer is somebody who's directing what's going to happen, not being told what's going to happen. And so that was where the word came from. And I struggle with it too, but to Julie's point, I don't think there's a perfect solution. Everybody's got a different understanding. I do caution the group to really be careful about changing that word because it is reflected in federal language. And you don't want to start something that's going to create confusion. But yeah, that's my 2 cents worth.
That's an excellent point, Linda. That I hadn't thought of, but you're right.
Well, and this is Dawn Lyons. I asked John Rosenland if he could jump on, and he's in another meeting, but he's going to try to get here as soon as he can. Because I know when I discussed this with him outside of the meeting, after our last meeting, we discussed it, he had a lot of really, really interesting points to make about it. And, I felt like his information was really valuable, but I would not do it justice. So hopefully he can join us in a few and tell us about what he had to say about it. But Mary, are you now available to discuss this at all, or are you back? Mary Evilson?
Can I, this is Peter Whittingham, for the record. If it would make it easier for all, I will default to the wisdom of this group. And it's not a case where I want this conversation to rest on my comment or even my suggestion. I think if the consensus is to leave as is, and it seems as if it may, we can simply move on. And I understand the rationale of the participant in this conversation. So we need not tarry in order to await John's validation of why the term should be used or not changed. I fully understand John's point. It was made very clear as to why he continued to use that and why there may be preference to leave it in its current form. And so we need not continue if it is rest on my conversation, because I initiated the conversation.
But this is Dawn Lyons. Peter, I don't think that you're the only one, obviously, that feels that they have a problem with the word consumer. So I think it's an important conversation to have, even if we don't necessarily do anything to change it right now at this point. It may be worth discussing whether or not we question it to the National SILC.
And I think it's important for us as the next generation of leadership to understand the history behind something as inclusive, something as simple as why do we use the word consumer. So I see this as a learning opportunity for everyone, and definitely not a drag a tie. What I'd like to propose is that we go on to 12, and then when John, let's trust, and then when John gets on before we adjourn, we could go back to 11. Does that make sense? Is that permissible?
This is Dawn Lyons. I just messaged John that we can come back to the topic when he's able to join us, so that he can give us his wisdom on that. Because I agree with you, Julie. I think it's an important learning opportunity for this group, because even I didn't quite understand the depth of the history of that word when it was brought up. So it's important for us to understand, but at the same time, it's also, like you said, important for us to break new ground if we feel like it's outdated and something needs to change. So that's fine with me. I don't know, are you guys fine with moving on until John comes back?
I think so. This is Linda Vejvoda for the record.
Okay. Let's move on to item 12, which is discussion and approval of fiscal financial year 24 remaining budget and future conference plans. I'm going to turn this back to Dawn.
Thanks, Julie. This is Dawn Lyons, and one of the materials attached is the Excel spreadsheet that I use to track the federal fiscal year 24 SILC budget, and mostly just our expenses, not necessarily our resource plan, or not all of our expenses, the ones that are basically spelled out in our spill that I don't have to track because we know they're going to be spent down, like the IL program and some of our salaries and things like that that don't necessarily need to be listed because we know they'll be spent. I didn't include those, but I did include them in the underneath the line items. There's like a little section where it shows how much was allocated to those areas so that you can see where we stood and where we stand. However, since that time that I posted that material, a couple more expenses have posted. So I know SNCIL submitted an RFR that recently was paid, and RCIL did the same. So more of that money has shown up in as paid or expended since that document that you've been able to look at. But we do still have some funding left over. I know SNCIL has not expended their entire subawards. So we'll have a little bit of extra money probably that will be deobligated if they don't revise their September RFR for some reason. We'll have a little extra money to be able to spend towards sending folks to conferences and trainings and things like that that cost a little more. It's not, you know, and it's not a huge amount, so it's easily expended within the time frame that we're given to spend it down. And we, of course, we get such little funding. It's always nice to have a little extra anyway to spend towards conferences when people really want to go. So that's just my input on that. But if anybody has any questions about that fiscal year 24 budget, I'm open to those right now. I guess there's no questions. So it was pretty self-explanatory. We spent everything down pretty well.
Is there anything else on this agenda item? Yeah.
That was actually the last one. So I don't know if we want to wait for John or if maybe we can just bring it to the next meeting and maybe let him have the time of the plan to discuss.
Let's do that. Let's do an agenda item. Okay. Yeah.
That does run us into item number 13, the discussion and approval of future meeting agenda items and meeting dates.
Right.
This is Linda Vejvoda. Sorry, Julie. This is Linda Vejvoda for the record. My last name is spelled Vejvoda, just so that everybody knows. Don, this is directed to you. Can you, I know that you said that there's a lot of people that have not taken the training that you have set up. Can you send those dates again to, or, well, to me, so that I can, I'm a little lost. When I read the email, I wasn't sure whether that pertained to everybody across the board or if it was just to those that have not done it at all. So could you send that for me? Or
this is Dawn Lyons, and I'm sorry for interrupting. Julie, I hope it's okay if I go back and explain what I explained earlier about this. It's individual training plans for each member that needs to be completed. And it's a federal requirement that I keep those on file for each fiscal year. So what I need from you is actually to go over that document and discuss with you which trainings you would like to plan for this upcoming fiscal year. And then we can sign that document and put it in our file so that we're federally compliant. So you just have to let me know when you're available to go over that with me, and we can do a Zoom, or I can call you, or however you want to do that.
Dawn, this is Margaret. I think you and I need to do that too, don't we? Okay.
Yes, most of you need to do that with me. There are a few people who have. So if you guys could just, those of you who know you haven't done that yet, please reach out to me so we can complete the ITP form.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other suggestions, questions?
This is Dawn Lyons. Julie, was there someone you wanted to invite to the January meeting, or was that something that kind of fell through the cracks and you never heard back from them?
I never heard back.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
And Amanda will be leading the next meeting because I'll be drinking margaritas on a cruise. Sorry, guys.
Have one for me, Julie.
You insist.
Yeah.
So
Are we ready for public comment?
Well, let me just real quick go over what I have for the next agenda items.
Okay.
So that we're all on the same page and you can let me know if I forgot anything. So we're going to revisit the topic of the term consumer and have John kind of give us a little more history on that because he's excellent at history of IL. And then we can discuss that more if we think that something might need to change in that regard and that we might want to ask about that. I don't feel like we can say, you know, hey, federal government, you need to change that term, but we can definitely, as, you know, a grassroots organization, push that idea forward and through the right channels and make sure that the rest of the nation is on board with that. And then maybe the whole nation of SILCs wants that changed and we can ask ACL at that point, right? So we can talk about that more at the next meeting. And then there's, let's see, what else? There are the standing agenda items, which are, you know, the membership topic and the updates that are listed. Usually we do those on the first day. And then we've got our SILC subawards that we need to have the review team make recommendations for in the SILC to make their decision on. We've got the updates on the literacy data that Peter's going to get from DD Council, Linda's going to get from the libraries, and the Department of Education has already given us. And then I can also, we can also discuss at that time if I should add a question besides just a check box to say if you needed help, because I can do that now, just add that to our survey to say whether or not you needed assistance completing the survey. But we can also discuss, you know, whether or not we need more than just that on our survey later, depending on what data we're able to come up with. So we can have that on our agenda, and then our standing agenda item about our budget and our spill evaluation, because we'll start evaluating our spill progress at our next meeting. And then that's what I've got. Did I forget anything?
Hopefully we'll be able to introduce our new youth outreach person.
That's right. Hopefully we will.
We have interviews set up, so we're making progress.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, I think we're ready for public comment. Do you want me to read the public comment section?
Yes, please.
Okay. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under public comment period unless the matter itself has been specifically included on an agenda as an action item. To provide public comment telephonically, dial 1-253-215-8782 US Tacoma. When prompted to provide the meeting ID, enter 929-904-1434 and passcode 707401. Comments will be allowed at the beginning and end of each day and will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Persons making comments will be asked to begin by stating their name for the record and to spell their last name and provide the secretary with written comments.
Okay. I didn't see who went first, though. I'm gonna call out Lisa.
Thanks so much, Julie. I appreciate that. Lisa Bonney for the record. I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the council that Mary and I had asked for an agenda item about the emergency preparedness program that we're just wrapping up, and we wanted to do a demonstration of the website and walk the group through. The more people who understand this tool and how it works, the better.
That would be awesome.
Thank you.
John, could you make sure that gets added?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mary?
Julie, for the record, this is Mary Evil Sizer. Lisa just read my mind. I was just going to ask if we could add the presentation of the disaster preparedness program to the next agenda. And what we can do is we can try to get you, I think it's 30 to 45 minutes to work with the agenda and work with the time frame that you have for the presentation. I don't know, Dawn, if you need to know exactly how long before the agenda is developed by Julie. Thank you.
This is Dawn Lyons. That is very helpful, Mary, and I think we can manage to add it.
Any other public comment? Julie Weissman's time up for the record. I just want to publicly say, you guys rock. I thought this was such a good 2 days. A lot of productive conversations, respectful disagreements. I am totally jazzed. So thank you all. Any other public comment?
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for your leadership.
Well,
Thank you, Julie. You do a great job. You rock too.
thank you. You Lord is giving me a heart. There's no other comment. I call this meeting adjourned, and our next meeting will be on January 8th at 1 p.m.
Thank you, everybody.
Take good care and happy holidays.